So the Christmas season kicks off with Black Adam and Captain America trying to save the holiday season. Let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Zach, and I started this YouTube channel because I just cannot watch a movie without having to talk about it afterwards. If you find yourself the same way, you are in the right place, my friend. Consider hitting that subscribe button. And while you're at it, I want this to be a conversation. So tell me your thoughts on Red 1. Have you seen it? Are you planning on seeing it? Are you going to avoid this like the plague? Comment down below. Let me know all your thoughts and opinions about that, guys. Now, going into Red 1, I had heard a lot of bad negative talk about this movie. This movie actually went into production 2 years ago, and with the writer's strike and the actor's strike kept getting delayed. Eventually, the budget ballooned to over $250 million. $1 million? Now, with the cast of J.K. Simmons, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Chris Evans, you can kind of see how that might have gotten there, along with this being a big budgeted Christmas action flick to kick off this year's 2024's holiday season. So going into the theater, wasn't really thrilled by the trailers, wasn't really won over by them, didn't think that this movie looked particularly good. So, what worked about Red 1 for me? And actually, the thing that stuck out for me about Red 1 the most was actually what surprised me the most, then later on started to disappoint me the most, and we'll talk more about that when we get to what didn't work about this. But sticking to what did work, the movie does do a genuine attempt at taking the Christmas lore of Santa, the North Pole, all the tropes and cliches we know about Christmas, and they really do try to utilize this new world that they are creating to re-explain and re-examine how those things might work. There's a lot of sequences in this movie demonstrating how Santa gets around the world in an entire night, how he's able to deliver presents to every single kid, and how the existence of Santa Claus is able to be kept under wraps. No pun intended. And all of that I thought was really fun, especially the way that this movie presents it. It's done in a very unique and new way that, while is reminiscent to some Christmas movies that have done it in the past, it also feels fresh and unique, and I really thought they did a genuine attempt at showing us that. Another thing that you can't deny works about this movie is this cast. These are all actors that are likable, that are charming, that I have enjoyed watching in the past, and that you just kind of like watching on screen, and that translates to their characters in this movie, especially Chris Evans. You know, we watched Chris Evans as Captain America for years, always keeping that moral compass in check. Here, he gets to play a completely different character, not completely different from what he's played before, but definitely different from Captain America. He's on the naughty list, so he's not exactly a good egg in this movie.
Are you telling me this clown is a level 4 naughty lister? A level 4 naughty lister?
And Chris Evans is having an absolute ball in this movie. He's kind of the only one that I think understands exactly what movie he's in. And again, we'll talk about more of that when we get to what didn't work. And The Rock and Chris Evans team up, it was enjoyable. It's very watchable for sure. There was a couple moments where I did chuckle at some of their interactions, at some of their camaraderie, and their dynamic throughout the course of this movie. I also really like J.K. Simmons in the role of Santa. Now, he's not in the movie all that much, as this movie revolves around Santa being kidnapped. Chris Evans and The Rock have to go and save him before Christmas. So, really, J.K. Simmons Santa is more of a plot MacGuffin in this movie, but when he is on screen, I enjoyed his rendition of Santa. I actually would have liked to see a little bit more. And counter to Chris Evans and The Rock, there also is a villain in this movie. And I thought the setup for the villain, I actually quite liked it. It involves the naughty list, people on the naughty list, maybe they shouldn't exist at all. I found the approach of her plan really fascinating and interesting. I wanted the movie to go deeper into it, wanted them to really explore it. But that's not really the kind of movie that Red 1 is. And with that, let's talk about, for me, what didn't work about Red 1. And it kind of does go hand in hand with the things that did work about Red 1, because while this movie had some really interesting concepts and new mechanics and devices to introduce us into the world of Santa Claus and the North Pole, the movie doesn't also feel like it fully commits to those concepts. And in that, there's a lot of logical errors that I feel the movie makes while trying to introduce the concept of how Santa, for example, is able to go undetected to anyone in the world. And at the start of this movie, we see that he's actually working with the military, with the government, And when you're in a world where people have iPhones, there's already conspiracy theories about UFOs and aliens, it was really hard to believe that Santa would never have been detected at all. In fact, Chris Evans detects that Santa, without giving anything away, pretty easily at the start of this movie. And unfortunately, I felt like the movie was creative with how it decided to go about approaching this world. They didn't really think all that much about how this world would work and operate. Another thing that doesn't really work about this movie for me is the script. And this is definitely from someone who's, 26 years old. I've seen a lot of movies in my time. If you have not seen a movie in your life, this is probably going to be a very exciting experience for you. But for me, this script is so corny, is so cheesy, and is so over the top, and is just littered with cliches and tropes galore. I mean, this movie literally starts by showing us the terribleness that is Chris Evans' character, by literally stealing candy from a baby. And they don't hide this trope at all. They show this baby with this candy like 3 or 4 times, and then eventually Chris Evans takes the candy. It's so predictable, it's so cliche, and the movie constantly has these tropes and cliches rolling throughout the entire movie that it is so predictable. And in that way, the movie is also kind of having fun with knowing that it's taking these tropes and cliches and just kind of being a very basic B-level movie. However, The Rock in this movie treats this material as if this is going to be his next Oscar-winning performance. Because The Rock, surprisingly, while I did like him and Chris Evans' dynamic at times, The Rock plays this role very seriously. Now, he is like the bodyguard of Santa, so the fact that Santa's been kidnapped and it's kind of on his watch, there is a lot of responsibility that The Rock's character is feeling. However, there really isn't much fun that comes with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's performance in this movie. He's very stoic, he's very serious, and every line he says is taken with such sincerity, and he commits so much that it actually started to make me laugh at everything he says. When The Rock is talking to Santa about how people are just on the naughty list and they just don't seem to care anymore, and he's doing it as if he's about to get that statue on stage, it's hilarious. And with this being a $250 million budgeted movie, it doesn't look particularly great a lot of the time. A lot of the CGI is kind of blurry looking. It's kind of fuzzy when the action sequences are going down. And it also takes me out of the movie a lot of the times in this movie because everything just kind of looks very fake. And when you're trying to create this world, when you're trying to get me to buy into how the logistics of this world work, when I don't 100% buy into it, when the effects take me out of it, when even the world's logic doesn't always line up and takes me out of it, the movie as a whole just started to crumble for me. And then I just started to laugh at it because the movie also is tonally inconsistent. There are times in this movie where it feels like it's catering and playing to the youngest demographic, like a 3-year-old is supposed to be getting these jokes. And then we'll go to a darker region like visiting Krampus, for example. That 3-year-old is probably going to be crying and screaming at that scene. And so the movie, I feel like, has trouble landing its audience because it feels like it's trying to be a family and kids movie, but there are elements that are way too kiddie for adults, and then there are elements that are way too serious and kind of scary, and also inappropriate with the language and some of the visuals for a younger audience. I also thought that the pace on this movie was very, very bad. I got bored about halfway through this movie, and I thought we were just about at the end of this movie. This movie is just shy of like an hour and 50 minutes, and it felt like it was 2.5 hours when I was sitting there in the auditorium. The laughs are very few and in between, and it just doesn't have the fun, chaotic energy that I feel like the movie needed to have to make it this schlocky, cheesy, corny movie all the way through. It starts to get bogged down by kind of hitting you over the head with this heavy message of be a good person, basically, and it just loses that fun that I was hoping to have with it. And in the end, the way that I feel about Red One is it's a pretty bad movie, but in some ways it's also aware that it's not trying to be a great movie. It just wants to entertain you. It just wants to have fun, and at times I feel like it fails at delivering that, and it becomes more of a slog and a bore than it does become a chaotic, entertaining experience. So for me, I think if you're in the middle school level, this might be a pretty entertaining, fun movie. There are times where this reminded me of maybe watching a Disney Channel original movie just with a higher budget to it. But if you're a little bit older than 13, if you're even hitting that 15, 16 range, I just don't feel like this movie did a good job at nailing an audience. And I do feel like it's an imbalanced mess a lot of the time. So while it's watchable, while it's not like a disaster, I don't think it's very good, and I'm not going to recommend it. I'm going to give it a weak not recommend. It's not the worst thing you could put on, but it's pretty bad. But that's just my opinion on Red One, and I'd love to hear yours, so comment down below and let me know. If you look right over there, we got a video that is predicting what is going to be the next billion-dollar film of 2025. That was a lot of fun to put together, as well as up there, we've got some movie franchise rankings that you can check out. As always, guys, thank you so much for hearing me out. Don't just watch movies, talk movies. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.